as information continues to pour in, and I'm joined now by Norman Brennan, who's a former Metropolitan Police officer and is the founder of the Law and Order Foundation. He's also an expert on knife crime. Norman, welcome to the show. Can I first get your take on, of course, there's been a rapid and very effective response from the police and the emergency services. They got a lot of criticism, Norman Brennan, but they once again running into danger dealing with this, and oftentimes what a lot of those people will see will be very traumatic for them too.
Absolutely, Martin. My first comments will be my thoughts and prayers, and I'm sure that of millions of other people in Britain, to those involved and their families. And the two primary concerns are that the suspect, who would pose a danger if he was still free, has been neutralised. He's not been shot. From what I understand, he's not been seriously injured, but he's been taken out of circulation. That has to always be the priority. And the second one is that all the victims are now being treated in hospital. I'm sure some may well have life-threatening injuries from what I read into this. And let's just pray that they're all saved and they're in the best hands possible. And here we are again with a major knife attack incident on the streets of Britain. What I want to make clear is this, Martin, is that, again, nobody should speculate. Nobody should be posting on social media horrific and gratuitous images of children or any victim that are suffering. And another overview is this: we've got to be calm. We never know whether someone is a terrorist, self-radicalized, someone that has got mental health issues, or somebody that has actually just gone out with a knife and gone out and committed this absolute mayhem. They're the four types of people that normally commit knife crime. And we could never know, Martin. There are times that we can never know, if they're not on our radar, that someone is going to go and do this. We do not live in a perfect world. So let's be calm, let's be rational, and let's await the Merseyside Police to tell us the true facts of what's happened this morning.
And Norman Brennan, it's also important to point out that these kind of incidents, mercifully, are incredibly rare in the United Kingdom. In fact, the last knife attack, machete attack at a school was in 1996 that I could find in Wolverhampton. That was an individual called Harriet Campbell, ended up getting life in prison. 18 children attacked at a teddy bears picnic. In that instance, Norman Brennan, he was a paranoid schizophrenic. He made out, he heard voices of the children taunting him. He was sent down for life, a different case, but just making the point, Norman Brennan, these kind of cases, it seems random attacks on children are incredibly rare in Britain. And in this instance, the individual has been safely apprehended and the police have identified there is no wider threat to the community at present.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Martin, to make that explicitly clear. It is very rare that our children are stabbed and murdered in Britain by strangers. Most often, it's done by, sadly, a parent or someone very close to the family. But just spreading out a little bit further from what you've stated, I post on homicide, gun and knife crime on a daily basis. I know the trends of crime around Britain, and transversely from what you're saying, and thankfully these stabbing attacks on children are so very rare, thank God. However, in the past 2 or 3 weeks, I've posted about 10 or 12 double and triple stabbings in Britain, not just London, around Britain. Knife crime in Britain is out of control. It's at an epidemic stage. The police sadly cannot control it, but thankfully on cases such as this morning in Merseyside, they've got a very good armed response teams there, turned up very quickly, and the public should be proud of the great police officers that, as you rightly highlighted earlier on, run towards danger. They risk their lives. And there are times when the police will risk their lives dealing with a volatile situation, pretty much like we saw almost a week ago, where they may seem to get it wrong. Well, you try being a police officer dealing with probably a life-threatening incident or an incident where you or your colleagues are likely to be seriously injured. We don't have robocops. We have human beings that do their best. And you have got one of the best police services in the world. And I think today just highlights how the public should be proud of them.
And Norman Brennan, it's also worth backing that point up by the fact historically, back in the day, the Merseyside Police Force, along with Glasgow and others, had a big problem with knife crime, and they formed violence reduction units and very effectively deployed stop and search and lowered fatalities and knife crime in their area. But you can never account, Norman Brennan, for a lone wolf, somebody who may just decide to do something like this, irrespective of where you are in Britain. And Norman Brennan, that turns on to the next point of the conversation. The availability of knives, the penalties, the punishment for carrying knives. And I know this is something that you're incredibly passionate about. What would you like to see changed?
Well, what I'd like to see, Martin, is a Prime Minister, a Home Secretary and a government take it seriously. When I was a serving police officer myself, I faced 2 life-threatening assaults, one following the other. For 4 years, I underwent operations. So I know the devastation of knife crime. I went to number 10 with a number of homicide families. All had lost a child or a loved one through knife crime. And we pleaded with Tony Blair and the Labour government back then on certain issues and initiatives that they needed to address. And in 30 years, 15 of them whilst a serving police officer, now as a retired police officer and a passionate campaigner on knife crime, there isn't one government, Martin, that has listened and acted and taken knife crime seriously. They always deal with the froth. Well, it's time that this government, because they're in power now and will be for at least the next 5 years, start dealing with the substance. And I've always advocated a minimum of 5 years imprisonment for carrying a knife. I know some people say, my God, 5 years is a long time. Well, when you've been stabbed to death, you're dead for a long time. You're dead forever. And we need to start taking knife crime seriously. I don't know whether today is the right time to say, would it have saved these young girls from being seriously injured and others that have been? But until this government take knife crime seriously and the criminal justice system take it seriously, all this business about banning machetes, only 24 out of all the hundreds of murders were by machetes. Banning them will not stop children and young men carrying knives that they can pick up from their kitchen drawer and going out and stabbing someone. We need to address it. We need a massive education program. We need mass stop and search. We need mentors. We need people to go into prisons. We need to give kids something more positive to do. We've got too many people in this generation that have got no hope, no values, often no value of their life. So if they've got value of their life, they're not think twice of taking another's life. And often it's the police officers that have to challenge these people. We need a big wake-up call and a massive education initiative put into place.
Well, Norman Brennan, thank you for sharing your knowledge and, sage-like wisdom on this traumatic day. Norman Brennan, who's a former Metropolitan Police officer and is the founder of the Law and Order Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Now, the Prime Minister has also issued a short statement on the major incident in Stockport. Horrendous and deeply shocking news emerging from Southport. My thoughts are with all of those affected. I would like to thank the police and emergency services for their swift response. I'm being kept updated as the situation develops. And this is also what the Home Secretary said in a statement on X, formerly Twitter, Yvette Cooper. I'm deeply concerned at the very serious incident in Southport. All my thoughts are with the families and loved ones of those affected. I've spoken to the Merseyside Police and Crime Commissioner to convey full support to the police and thanks to the emergency services for responding. And of course, we'll keep you across the latest from Southport, where at least 8 people have been stabbed in a knife attack. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News.